Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike. I am the American analyst, and today we are going to be talking about Germany, the European Union, and NATO. Is Germany rearming? Probably not. All right. If you like what I do, please be sure to subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter and Minds. Let's get into it. Okay, so this is an article from the New York Times. Recently, there was a conference, a security conference in Munich, and Mike Pompeo, who is the Secretary of State, had said the West is winning. Not quite sure what he means by that. I have read the article. Still not quite sure what in what context he's referring to. Doesn't matter. Wanted to highlight a couple of things and also just talk more broadly about NATO, if it's still relevant. Also, reiterate some of the things I said yesterday about China and the global competition right now that there is. So that goes right into this. I talked about this a lot yesterday, but countries thinking of letting Huawei, the Chinese telecommunications giant, build next-gen communications network, he warned, should be prepared to see American intelligence cooperation reduced, which is funny because I read an article yesterday that said the exact opposite thing. A different American official said the exact opposite. So who knows what's true? I have no clue. His remarks were met with silence by British and German officials, who are always looking for ways to avoid offending the Chinese. It's because they're cowards. This year's conference reflected the division in the era of Trump and Brexit. The theme was Westlessness. I'm not sure what that means, but this is definitely true. Close allies were unmoored and uncompetitive in a world both more diverse and more autocratic. I don't think that's true. More diverse and more autocratic. This is the New York Times we're talking about. Okay, so Macron, Zuckerberg was there, talked for a very long time. They talk about Zuckerberg, or they talk about Facebook and election tampering. But I wanted to talk about NATO more specifically because they eventually get into Russia. The French president is trying to send out feelers for a European equivalent of NATO. And before I tell you my thoughts on that, NATO is an organization. It's called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and it is a defensive alliance that was formed in the Cold War against the Soviet Union. So its purpose was to contain the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union no longer exists. And since then, NATO has expanded. Keep in mind, with these maps, this also includes the United States and Canada in NATO. So this is 1990, just before the fall of the Soviet Union. You can see in the east here, this is what was known as the Warsaw Pact, because we formed NATO, and the Russians the Soviets almost immediately formed this Warsaw Pact as a counter. And here are all the nations in NATO in 1990 that were added over the years. And below that, here are all the nations today. So you can see a huge expansion, including the Baltic states, Poland, various Balkan states, including, and also Czechoslovakia. So we expanded NATO after the fall of the Soviet Union, and since the 2000s, a couple nations have been added to NATO. I think that what is the purpose of NATO now that the Soviet Union is gone? As the leader of NATO, the United States has quasi-control over the defense of these defense, meaning the armed forces of these nations. So I'd be willing to bet we have, I know for a fact, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Germany, UK, Italy, all these countries, I know for a fact that we have military bases in. And so it's, you could almost call it a pretext to have armed forces in all of these nations. That seems to me to be the main purpose. And now the French president, Emmanuel, perhaps, I don't know, I don't speak French, Emmanuel Macron, is proposing a European equivalent. And I shouldn't say proposing, he's more trying to see what kind of support there is. And the Germans seem to be against it, but they're also trying to move away from the Americans. And I think that's purely because they don't like the current administration. They just, personally, I don't like them. So I think they're trying to I don't think they're serious, is the main point. I don't think they're serious about moving away from NATO. If they did that, it would certainly give the Russians a free hand, or at least more of a free hand in Eastern Europe, which is why the Eastern European countries like Poland are particularly concerned with the French trying to do this. But the thing is the French have had historical alliances with the Russians in the past. They had considered Russia to be their natural ally for a long time because of the Germans. And it seems like they're trying to do that again. And the biggest problem is that they can't be too forceful, the Europeans, I mean, because a lot of their oil, you can see it right here, the Russians are attempting to build a new pipeline from Russia to Germany. Some crazy amount of European energy comes from Russia. It's an insane amount. So they can't outright say, we're not going to do what you want. So here's Mr. Macron. On Russia, he said, we need a European policy, not a transatlantic policy. He insisted he was not frustrated with the apparent paralysis of the German government, but conceded that he is impatient. France and Germany need to take risks together. That means our relationship has to change and adapt. He argued that the Europeans needed to define their own interest to preserve their sovereignty in a world dominated by an increasingly nationalist United States and an ambitious Russia. That's not true, but I'm not saying he's lying. He's not. I think he's mistaken. That's the best way to put it. He's mistaken about this. I said yesterday, the world is not dominated by an ambitious Russia. It's not. It's dominated by the economic spheres of influence of the United States and China. And he does go into that, to be fair, but Russia is a middling power at best. We need, in the long term, I will read this because he's not being totally unrational. The current policy, this is the French president, the current policy of harsh economic sanctions in place since the Russian annexation of the Crimea and the war in eastern Ukraine has not changed Russian behavior, he argued. The sanctions have, quote, changed absolutely nothing in Russia. I am not at all proposing to lift them. I'm just stating this. That's true. That's something like that, I would say. I don't think it's completely had no effect. It's hurt their economy, to be sure, which, of course, was the point. I don't believe in miracles. I believe in politics. Okay, that's just a platitude. Okay, whatever. Okay, so now they're talking about Annegret Kramp-Karrenbauer. It's a German woman. What amazes me is that Merkel in Germany, the German chancellor, has been in power for so long. She's been in power for at least 2 decades, at least. That's how a democracy, or how a country can call itself a democracy and have had the same leader for 2 decades is beyond me. Even more so, I thought that she's tapped her successor. She's not supporting someone. She's tapped her successor. She's the leader of the biggest political party in Germany, and she has named her successor. If that's not a monarchy, I don't know what is. So they say right here, maybe I'll do a deeper dive on current German politics. No, I won't. No, I won't. Okay. Here it is. Ms. Merkel's hand-picked successor as leader of the conservative Christian Democratic Union. It's amazing to me that, of course, all presidents support who they think should be the next president. In the United States, I'm talking about. Like, you had Obama campaigning for Hillary. But he didn't come out and say, like, you are going to be the leader. That's not what happened. But it is what happens in Germany. Whatever. She is the defense minister. Munich, consensus of words, consensus of actions, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this European partnership is never going to happen. It's just not. The European quote-unquote age has long since passed. It died with the First World War. And the fact that they think that, the fact they think they could go their own way without the United States is, I think they're kidding themselves. Again, Russia's not that big a deal, but China will move in. It might sound crazy, but China will move into these places, not invade, but economically. They already are, as I've said. I think, so let me get to the point. Do we still need NATO? No. I don't think we do need it from a national security perspective, but it benefits us. It's not necessary, but it benefits us. There was something I wanted to talk about in regards to this. Mr. Pompeo tried to be upbeat, talking about the joint work the United States and Europe were doing to confront Russia. He announced a $1 billion. That's not correct. He announced $1 billion to bolster an energy project for Central European countries on the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas. An effort to blunt Russian energy projects like the pipeline that I mentioned. So, this is kind of I guess you call it a companion video. We're sending $1 billion to countries in Eastern Europe. But that is in order to blunt Russian influence. I don't know how I feel about this. I don't know how I feel about this. $1 billion is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And as I've said, I don't really care about Russia. Like, I'm not concerned about them. Like, if we were doing something like this, say in the Philippines, which the Chinese are trying to influence, or in, let's say Vietnam, which also, same thing, Chinese are trying to influence. I could see the point. But this seems like a waste of money to me. And again, I think NATO benefits us, which is why we should keep it. Why would we throw something away that benefits us? But we don't need it. We don't need the Europeans. We don't. And you know what? If the French and Germans wanna go their own way, they'll be fighting within 10 years, and we'll have to come over there and break them up, show them who's boss. All right, that's where I'll leave it. Good luck, France, Germany. Honestly, as I said, the main point. They're not going to go their own way. NATO's going to be around at least for the medium-term future, but we'll see about the long term. If you like what I do, please be sure to subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter and Minds. Have a good evening. Thank you all for listening. This is Mike, the American Analyst, Follow me on Twitter, Minds, and subscribe to me on YouTube, and be sure to hit that bell notification. I'll be coming out with new videos every single day for your viewing enjoyment. Have a good one.